Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Plains on the Prairie podcast. I'm Max,
And I'm Sam.
and today we are going to be talking about none other than North Dakota's finest, the Happy Hooligans.
That was really smooth there.
Thank you. Yeah, a little bit of practice went into it beforehand.
All right.
So yeah, we have a big show ahead of us. We're excited to share with you. I'll let Sam kind of give you guys the rundown, and we'll get started.
Yeah, we're just going to go through some headlines kind of some recent aviation and warbird news more so. So our first event is actually an ongoing restoration called the Tsunami Project. So the Tsunami Project is a restoration of what's called a Tsunami, which is a purpose-built air racer. Over during the Reno air races in the unlimited class, there was a Tsunami that raced back in the 80s and 90s, I believe. And this is out of this Tsunami Project. I'm just going to share my screen here to their Facebook page so you listeners and viewers can check it out. But this is what it looks like. It looks pretty similar to a P-51 generally. They're trying to break the world speed record of, I believe, this 528. They have a good description down here, and they're involving children and high school kids into their program or their restoration to come and learn a little bit. Recently, this was about a week and a half ago, they've been doing some work on the fuselage with some skins there. You see here's the rudder pedals. They're always on the lookout for parts right now, so if any of you might have some old parts laying around, I know they were looking for, I think it was T-34 rudder pedals. They're always looking for help, it looks like. So that's the Tsunami Project. Really interesting there, so I'd check that out if I were you. And then another one I had was the flyover that's coming up pretty soon in, I believe it's on September 25th over DC, the Arsenal Democracy flyover. I don't know if you've heard about that, Max.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about 70 vintage aircraft to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. So the CAF is providing a large amount of aircraft, a good proportion, I should say. And they're sending, it says 18 warbirds from 13 units across 7 states to help participate. So, of course, you got the Fifi, the B-29, the Tuskegee Airman P-51C, Sentimental Journey. That's one I actually had the privilege of flying on a few years back. That's an amazing airplane. And then they got Gunfighter. They got a few B-25s, a couple of L5s, some little guys there, a Corsair, a Wildcat. So a lot of really neat airplanes taking part. I don't have any information on much of the other aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Fagan Fighters is going, right?
Yeah, Fagan Fighters, and I believe Miss Mitchell with the CAF out of Minneapolis. I think they're sending her to the flyover as well. I know I've heard there is a Minnesotan aircraft, or at least a couple that are taking part in it. So it'll be cool to see which ones.
Yeah. Well, I follow the Fagan Fighters Instagram. I don't know if you do too.
Oh yeah.
I'm so jealous of that guy.
I know every day he wakes up. It's like, oh, what am I going to hop into? My P-38, P-40, P-51. It's like, I wish.
I'm over here in student debt, just college.
Yeah.
College right now, thinking about maybe one day buying an airplane.
Yeah, maybe one day.
But yeah, that was another interesting thing. These outdoor air shows or flyovers have gotten really popular due to COVID. I mean,
especially, yeah.
I don't know if you were in town. I think it was in May when the 148th flew over Fargo.
I didn't catch that one. I caught them when they flew back in the Twin Cities with the C-130 from the 109th. But I was at the B-52 flyover at Sanford out in West Fargo. That was impressive. That you think that a B-52, a 60-plus-year-old aircraft can't go very fast, but we were all just hanging out by my car, and we heard a guy say, "Oh, there she is," and we looked up, and she was over within maybe 8 seconds. It was just, and you didn't even hear it coming. That was the crazy part. You think with a B-52, it's like, oh, you got to hear it coming from like a mile away. Nope, just right on top of you instantly.
Yeah, and these little public boosts, morale boosts, are awesome to have right now. And
especially,
I mean, it'd be cool to have these after COVID too, and I hope they really do. I mean, they can justify these cross country flights or whatever the training type
activities
they're doing. So, so it's something really cool. And then these warbirds doing that as well is always awesome to see.
Go ahead.
In Fargo, we used to, at the Air Museum there used to be people flying all the time warbirds, so it was always a treat. So it's cool to see something else too once in a while. But I live at my parents' home in Fargo. They got the flight path right to the south end of the main runway there at Fargo, and you can hear a Mustang so distinctively, and then a T6. Some people just hate the sound of a T6, but
I see especially I grew up in the Twin Cities, actually pretty close to Wings Over the North in Eden Prairie. And my dad and I will be hanging out in the house, and instantly you'll recognize the sound of a Mustang coming over instantly. Yeah. And it's just that the distinct sound, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the Merlin engine. I don't know specific engines, but so distinct. Like I don't know. I've been able to pick out the difference between a T6 and a Mustang pretty easily.
That's my favorite sound. I camped at Oshkosh a few years back, and
for sure
there'd be two or three Mustangs flying over in formation at like 7 a.m, and
just wake everybody up.
Yeah, and I mean, the people I was with were like, we're okay with that. Best alarm clock I've ever had. So
for sure.
But
all right.
I think other than that, there's just a couple quick headlines.
Go ahead.
Tom Riley, the person who restored that XP82 twin Mustang, that's for sale right now. So if any of you are out there, I believe he's selling it for $12 million. Yeah, $12 million.
I got that.
So I think I got a few bucks in my wallet, but we can all pitch
go in. Yeah.
And then Planes of Fame Museum, based in Chino, California, just got an airworthy Gloucester Meteor, T7, the trainer variant. So that's something really interesting to see stateside. You don't see a lot of RAF warbirds out there. So
I know there's a couple guys that I follow on Insta that are from the UK, and I think it came from the UK actually.
Yeah.
And they're a bit disappointed that they lost that, but yeah. What can we say?
Well, Adolf Galland, the famous German fighter ace from World War II, he flew 262s. So he always joked if they strapped Meteor engines to a 262 airframe and made it a little bit larger, it would have been the perfect fighter.
There you go.
So
that's coming from that guy. So it must mean something.
Trust it. All right. So and then you just landed an internship with Fargo.
I did.
So
I did land a new internship. I started there last week. Kind of working the front desk a little bit for right now, but it's a bit of a busy session, if that makes sense. So we're just getting ready for this gala, which is actually this Friday. I believe I don't know the specifics of the ticket prices, but we are having Sierra Sioux, TBM, and a Spitfire actually just came.
Nice.
Coming in from Minot. So it's actually going to be quite the turnout. I'm excited. I'm going to try and sneak my camera in and do some James Bond style photography. But one of the cool things that my boss was telling me is that they're strapping beer kegs the underwing pylons like they did in the war, and that's gonna be how your beer is dispensed. So
that's really cool.
I might have to sneak a glass if no one's looking or so. To set the record straight, I am older than 21. Right. So
that's the Mark 9, right?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, and I believe the Mark 9 was the variant that actually did the beer kegs, so that's kind of cool to keep it accurate. I might have to stop in there this weekend if they're on Sunday.
I'm hoping
they're still there.
I think they should still be. They haven't mentioned when they're coming in or when they're going. I would assume probably sometime tomorrow. If you're, I don't know when we're going to make this live, but I'm going to try and get recordings of them if they are coming in on Friday, because I work all day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just check my social media at Shots from Saban, and hopefully they're up there, and I'll repost them if they don't.
Yeah, I remember well, they used to call it the celebrity auction. I don't know if they still do, but when I was volunteering there, we had Sweet Revenge come in a couple of years, and that was kind of neat to see.
Yeah, it's cool. Because that's from Fagan, right?
Yep. That's the red checker nose. That one's interesting because it's got the polished aluminum propeller. Kind of like I think Quicksilver is another one like that. But I think they stayed for a few days, so maybe I'll have to. I'm going out to Bismarck this weekend, but I might have to swing in through Fargo.
Of course.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Any other news that we should cover?
No, we can probably dive into the hooligan section.
Cool. All right. So before we get started, just want to say that most of the information that we'll be covering is coming from this book right here. This was the 2017 or the 70th anniversary North Dakota Happy Hooligans memoirs book. Lots of pictures, lots of information. I was actually gifted this during a visit that I had about a year ago for a class project. So that was a very nice welcome gift.
Very nice.
So let's get started on the history of the Happy Hooligans. So they can trace their lineage back to the 392nd Fighter Squadron during the Second World War, where they flew P-38s before and even during the Normandy invasion into the early 1945, when they transitioned to the P-47 Thunderbolt, doing ground interdiction missions, all that fun stuff. After the war, the 392nd was inactivated, like a lot of fighter squadrons at the time. But they were, let's see, my notes are all over the board. They were reactivated in December 1946, and they received federal recognition a few weeks later in January 1947. So yeah, let's see. So interestingly, that the lineage was like P-47s and P-38s. However, when they became the Air Guard, they didn't fly either of those aircraft. I believe the P-38s never even made it to the Air National Guard scene, but I know the P-47s did. But they did fly the F-51 Mustang, which is the P-51. It's just that they called it the F after the war for fighter designation instead of pursuit. So let me see if I can pull up a picture. Oh, I closed my screen. So I think you guys can still hear me.
Yep.
I just closed everything.
Yeah, that's a folder I have too on my desktop. It's full of airplane stuff.
Yeah. Let's see. So what's interesting about these early Air Guard Mustangs is they have, oh my gosh, why is it going crazy? If you look closely, kind of a bit of a blurry image, they have this buffalo roundel, or the bison, I should say, for everyone in North Dakota. That isn't their actual logo. I believe that was their early one, and they eventually transitioned into the Eagle, which is on the F-94. We'll cover that in a bit. But while doing my research, I found that the F-51 wasn't the only aircraft that they flew. They also flew the B-26 Invader and the C-47 Skytrain, as well as the AT-6 Texan for training purposes. And as everyone that's probably listening to this podcast knows, a lot of those AT-6s are still out flying today on the air show circuit. I believe I remember hearing that there was, at least from someone at the museum, that there is a former Hooligan AT-6 somewhere up in northeastern North Dakota. I don't know if it still looks like it did, but I heard that someone bought one of them.
Yeah, I heard. I think it's actually up in Grafton. I'm not
Gotcha.
well aware. There was. Well, I remember. I don't think it was a Hooligan one, but near Hillsboro there was a fuselage section of a T6 just sitting out on the fields next to. I don't know if you've been by that airport on.
I haven't been up by the airport. I have been up there.
It's off I-29 on the west side.
Okay.
but they used to have it there. A friend of mine, Mike Vandermeulen, he used to be a longtime volunteer at the Air Museum. He would go around and snag pictures for airliners.net back when that was quite a booming system there. So
Gotcha. Also, most notably of the C-47s that they had there was Mini H, which is actually still around. She hasn't been broken up and turned into pop cans. She's out in Bonanzaville in West Fargo, and I believe they're still open for another couple months before it gets too cold. But yeah, you can go out there and see her and actually walk through her. I used to be an intern there as well, so I kind of have to give a plug. But she's not in the best of shape, and they're working on trying to get her fixed up. But, I mean, she's intact and she's still around, so that's kind of all that matters there.
yeah.
So after the F-51s left in 1954, the Hooligans transitioned to the F-94 Starfire. And I should go back and correct myself. The Hooligans didn't become the Hooligans until the mid to late 50s, and we'll cover that in a little bit more. But the first jet fighter that they flew was the F-94 Starfire and the T-33 T-Bird. They were the first Air National Guard unit to be proficient with air-to-air rocket gunnery training. So they, I think, what was the specific name of the pilot slips my mind, but he hit a 2x3 moving target with an unguided rocket from the F-94, and they basically were like, all right, you're qualified. So I always get a kick out of that story. So yeah, and that was, like I said, that was the first jet fighter assigned, and it would be their first, or their role change from just a generic air guard unit to air defense, which was new in the early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
They were tasked with protecting, I believe, from the border with Montana up until, or no, all of Montana and up until the border with Minnesota. So they would work in conjunction with like Malmstrom Air Force Base and I do believe that there was a unit in maybe not in Minot at the time, but I know Grand Forks had an air defense unit as well.
Yep.
So yeah. After that, this is kind of like a walkthrough podcast. We're hoping that the images will be popping up while I'm showing these, so it's not just our beautiful faces talking into a camera. So after the F-94C left in 1960, it was replaced by the F-89 Scorpion, which, as we talked about, I believe last episode, I think we gave a little bit of a shout out. I think it was one of my personal favorites. It was also, the F-89 was the first Hooligan aircraft to actually have Happy Hooligans written on the tail. It was either on the tail or on their fuel pods, I believe, depending on which variant you look at. I know the F-89D had the Minnie Mouse rockets in the wingtip pods. I don't know how much pilots enjoyed those. I think they were a bit cumbersome. But,
yeah.
Yeah. And while flying the F-89, the Hooligans took second place at the Ricks Memorial Trophy Weapons Meet competition at Tyndall Air Force Base in August 1964. So, it's a part of Hooligan history. I know the F-89, the museum, a couple of the museum staff were talking, if the collection at the Air Force Base or at the Air Guard base was to ever be relocated to a place where more people could see it, which has been a genuine conversation. I believe they said that the F-89 would be the only aircraft that would not be allowed to come to the museum because there is such a high demand at other Air Force bases that want one, because so many were torn apart and scrapped after the war. I don't believe the F-89 ever became a target drone. I believe it was just too slow and there were no comparable like Soviet aircraft that kind of resembled it. So they just figured, okay, we'll get rid of them all.
How many F-89s have you come across just from your...
In my time, I've came across 3, actually.
Yeah.
I came across the one at the Minnesota Air National Guard Museum in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is actually in phenomenal shape. Given, how few volunteers and resources they have. I always like aircraft that are on display that have like the original stencil markings and like warning signs, or as opposed to the one in Fargo, just it has generic, North Dakota Air Guard, no stenciling other than like the ejection seat warnings. But no, and then the third one I saw when I was in Hartford, Connecticut, and that one was very more or less kind of just in bits and pieces, but it was, you could still identify an F-89. So
right.
Yeah. That was flown from 1960 until 1966 when they transferred over to the F-102 Delta Dagger. So while flying the Dagger, the Hooligans surpassed 56,000 accident-free hours, which, especially for an Air Guard unit made up of, to be honest, volunteers, that's pretty damn impressive.
And especially of the time,
Oh, for sure.
Accidents were, just imagine nowadays, like you hear about 1 or 2 accidents a year, maybe in the US, if that. And now back then it was like every month you had a couple, more so on the commercial aviation side.
But with those early jets, like you didn't know how they were going to operate. Like it was all kind of just up in the air at that point, and pun intended.
Well, especially with that Delta wing, it's such you go from a Scorpion to the Dagger. You got that wing major wing change from going from a straight wing to
for sure
that Delta. So many different slow speed characteristics and crazy.
I'm always curious to learn how, especially those early years with the Air Guard, when they transitioned from an F-89, which was compared to an F-102 pretty slow.
Yeah.
Like, did the pilots have to go back and completely redo their training, or did they have to? I mean, I assume that a cockpit in an F-102 is very different from an F-89, and F-109 or F-89, excuse me, is a 2-seat. You have the pilot and the Wizzo, or I believe a Rio if you're in the Navy, in the back. So, like, how do they take on that responsibility? It's just
I can't even think of a trainer to go into a Delta Wing aircraft, because that was I mean, back then that you had the 106 later on, then you also had Mirages, and then you got the Typhoon nowadays, but there's not many Delta Wings out there, so there wasn't very many opportunities to train.
Yeah, definitely not in the United States. I know the United States has kind of strayed away from them since the 106.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, if you want to consider the F-117 a Delta Wing, but I mean, that's just kind of like a flying wing. So actually, it's interesting talking to one of the volunteers at the museum. He had crewed F-106s at Grand Forks back when they still had that unit, and he was saying that the F-106s were a considerable step up from the 102s. And I mean, the Fargo Air Guard never flew the 106s. However, the 5th Fighter Interception Squadron out of Minot did for the longest time, actually, for like 30 or 40 years. And we'll cover them in a separate podcast, but just hearing how, and then he went from the F-106s, he came to Fargo and started working on F-4s and the F-16s, and just kind of the complications between the cold weather, they seemed almost non-existent on, I think he said the F-4s and F-16s as compared to the 106s. So we're getting a bit off topic here, but let's see. Sorry, all my notes go up until the F-106. I wasn't able to get much after that. So after the 106s departed in 1969, I believe, you come to my personal favorite, the F-101B Voodoo.
Yeah.
Now that is the 2-seat fighter interceptor. I think it was originally conceived as escort for the bombers, long range ones, but it never was needed in that exact role. And it was a 1-seater originally, I believe the F-101A, or not the B, obviously, but I think either this A or C, one of the two, was a 2-seater. And then they had the RF-101, which was the reconnaissance version. Let me see. Sorry, I'm flipping through this book page right here. So yeah, and all the aircraft that we've mentioned, they all are, at least one of them is on display in at the base. I know for a few of the other ones, such as the F4 or the F-101, there is at least one of them displayed off of the base. We'll be talking about that a little bit later as well. So I believe the Hooligans flew the F-101 for, if I could find that picture. Just enjoy the pictures that will be accompanying the slideshow. Let's see, yeah, they flew the F-101 from 1970 until the late 1970s. I can't find the exact date, but they transitioned to the extremely popular F4 Phantom, which, as you can see, if you saw my background earlier in the episode, you know that it's probably one of the most, if not the most iconic Hooligan aircraft that they flew. For almost, I believe it was more than a decade, they flew the F4, performing the air defense mission in, North Dakota, upper northern North America, if that makes sense. And I believe they had their first combat deployment to Iceland in the F-Force, where they intercepted 8 of the Soviet Bear bombers.
Pretty impressive. That'd be a heck of an experience flying off the wing of a T-95.
I'd be curious to know, like, if it was just kind of like a tense stare down, or if the pilots were like, "Hey, how you doing?" Obviously they can't talk to one another, but
right. I was reading up on an article. It was B-52s. One was actually from Minot. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the multiple interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a cool flight to be on, just to see what you can run into.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I heard that they actually, at least on one of the intercepts, they got like really close, and the B-52 got caught in the jet wash. And there's like camera footage from one of the navigators or something on the B-52, and they are just thrown around. So I don't know if that was intentional or just a bit of an oversight on the Russian pilot's part, but it was, there was no audio, but the way that the cameraman or woman, I don't know, was thrown around and back, that was looked like a bit of a scary moment.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then after the F4 departed, it was the F-16, which was the last fighter that the Hooligans flew. They flew the F-16 from 1989 up until 2007. Sam, since you're from the Fargo area, do you ever recall hearing or seeing any F-16s at air shows or anything like that?
I do. I was 7 when they left, but I remember a little bit just seeing them bank and yank over Fargo once in a while. So that was always quite the sight. I don't have too much recollection from it, but more so with the Learjet that you'll probably cover next. But
to go back to the F4 real quick, I just recalled a story. One of my previous college roommates, his father went to NDSU in the 80s. And, being an aviation geek, I always have to ask, like, oh, do you remember the F4s or the F-16s? And he was telling a story of, I think it was a Saturday, like during game day, and the Hooligans were going to fly over, do a little show for everyone. And they came over campus, and my friend's father was studying at the time. He wasn't interested in football. He was more of a basketball player. So he was studying in the library, and he just finished up. He was walking out, and he said, one of the Hooligans must have gone full afterburner. And I think he said almost broke the sound barrier over Fargo, especially over campus, because he said like 2 of the windows in the library blew out. And he said he didn't know if the pilot got reprimanded for that or what, but saying just being able to see like over a population center such as Fargo, having an F4 blow out a window, I think that if it's true, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Especially with how heavy those old girls got.
Can't do that anymore.
But. No, you can't do that in an MQ-9, that's for sure. Let's see now. So yeah, so the F-16s play a very big part in Hooligan history. Considering that tomorrow is the 19th anniversary of 9/11, it would be I don't know. The story with the hooligans in 9/11 is actually very interesting. Um, on September 11th, the hooligans were stationed at Langley Air Force Base. They had a small detachment there that was in charge of protecting Washington, D.C. And on September 11, 2001, three F-16s were scrambled to cover or provide air cover over Washington, D.C. After the Pentagon attack. Or actually, no, I read that they were scrambled in response to the World Trade Centers. And while they were in the process of being scrambled, the airliner hit the Pentagon. So I believe, I have the names in this.
Yeah, I can't remember the name, but one volunteer, he's a few years younger than I am. His dad, I think, was actually one of the pilots.
Really?
Yeah, I can't recall the last name, but um, I think is that picture still on display at the museum?
Yeah, or they have the painting
They have the
of
painting.
0926, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, it's currently on display for a limited time. I don't know when we'll get around to posting it, but it is at the museum for a limited time. It was Major Dean Ekman, who was the first one flying over in
That was him.
0926. And then you had Major Brad Daring and Captain Craig Borgstrom. I know two of the F-16s were the ADF C variants. And I think the third one was a two-seater that just, I don't know if that actually was fully armed, but I know the other two were. But yeah, they were obviously unable to intercept the airliner before it hit. Yeah, so moving forward, actually the second F-16 that was scrambled and flew over to the Pentagon is on display at Joint Base McChord, I believe, in Washington. So if you're ever out there, you can go and check it out. I know it's on my bucket list to see it. So yeah. So after the F-16s departed in 2007, they were equipped with the C-21 Learjet. I honestly do not know a whole lot about that aircraft. So Sam, I'm curious if you know anything about it.
Well, I believe it's a Lear 45 civilian designation. If not, it's a 35. I'm not really the strongest on biz jets.
Yeah, neither am I.
It's not my interest level or interest area. I mean, I can, military aviation obviously is there for me, and then just some GA stuff. But yeah, they had the Learjet. They would bring it into the museum once in a while for display, like temporarily wheel it over or taxi it over, I should say.
Was it a functioning one, or was it?
Yeah, they brought it over. They just kind of kept it on the ramp. It wasn't very often.
Gotcha.
Then they always had it out for the air shows, back when that was when they were around. But yeah, that's I believe it's on display in Dayton now, right?
Yeah, it was at least I believe 8064. That's the designation on it. It was the first one accepted by the Air Force, and I actually just found out that it's being put into storage. So they're taking it off display. Bit of a bummer. For me personally, I would like to see it given back to the hooligans and put into their Air Memorial Park. That's just me, but I don't have that control yet, so have to wait. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Unfortunately, though, I mean, it's sad. I mean, I'm interested in every aircraft, but I feel like those type of aircraft, the utility type, kind of like you got I always forget the designation, but like a King Air. You got military King Airs, and you got the T-50, which is a Cessna 172. They don't get much attention, unfortunately. So coming from like a museum standpoint, I'm guessing that might be some of the reason, but that could really shine at the Fargo Air Museum for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's. I mean, they obviously a Learjet is nowhere near as fast or as cool appeal. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but an F-16 draws a bigger crowd than a Learjet.
Right.
So I can see where they're coming from. Hey, it's just kind of in the collection. Like, yes, it's a part of Air Force history, but if they're trying to tell a bigger part of it, an F-16 has done more I believe, for the Air Force than a Learjet.
And as a museum, you want to draw a crowd, and
Exactly.
you want as many attention getting airplanes as possible. I mean, that museum over there is
it's incredible.
Plenty of aircraft to draw you in. I mean, I would be drawn in by that Learjet personally, but I know plenty of people who most likely wouldn't. I mean, people on campus here, they barely know what a
they don't. Yeah, they hardly. I don't know if they could even. Yeah, spell.
They're all airline geeks.
Yeah.
Sorry
at UND. Yeah, I should clarify. I go to NDSU, so the aviation crowd is very low at NDSU. I assume UND, it's much.
Yeah, and that's where I remember my freshman year, I was with a group of people, and we were out at a restaurant, and a kid had a crush on the waitress, and he slaps down his student pilot certificate at the table, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was supposed to be my credit card," and that does not work up in Grand Forks. I mean, it's a student. I mean, a large percentage, I think, is, I don't remember exactly, but it's between 10 and 20% of our students are aviation out of 16,000. So there's plenty of aviation.
Yeah, plenty of pilots to go around.
Plenty of nerds up here. But
that's perfect. More people listen to our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I got plenty. I bet you a few of them are listening to this as it's uploaded. So
awesome. That's what I'd like to hear. So after the Learjet departed in 2013, the Hooligans lost their manned flying mission. Bit of a bummer, but they picked up the unmanned reconnaissance mission, flying the MQ-1 and now the MQ-9 Predator. During my previous research project, I was talking to a member of the Air Guard who was involved with higher ups. I won't say his name, but he said that in the previous 50 years that they were air defense, obviously they were doing a service to their country, protecting against protecting the region against Soviet bombers or Russian bomber formations. However, with the MQ-1 and MQ-9, they have been more involved with direct frontline combat than they ever have been before. During my tour of the base, I was told that they fly combat missions in the Middle East from Fargo, which for me, that's just absolutely mind-boggling. Mm. The fact that they can wake up, drive to work, which, it's on the base, and fly a mission somewhere in the Middle East and protect our men and women on the ground there. I think that's remarkable. And then go back home to their families at the end of the day. That's just the world we live in these days, but it's very impressive.
I mean, from a pilot standpoint, it's kind of like, oh, they're taking our jobs, but it's super important. And the development of unmanned flight is amazing the last 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I got to, when I toured the base, I think it was my senior year of high school, and I got to fly a Predator simulator. I think it was actually before senior year, because I think, when did they get the Reapers? Was it 2018?
2017.
17. Okay, mm-hmm. So it might have been earlier than that, but there's two of us. I was flying the simulator, and then someone was operating the camera and the weapons. So it was really sweet. It was kind of a cool opportunity.
That's very cool.
And before that, I didn't really have, I shouldn't say the respect, but just I guess I always looked at unmanned aerial vehicles and kind of a lower aspect. Mm-hmm. There's a joke always with drone pilots and things like that, but that's something I would not want to mess with,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
no.
It's such an amazing program they have over there.
Oh, for sure. And you look at how far North Dakota has come. You had bombers and refuelers at Grand Forks and Minot, and then you had the fighter missions at all three of the bases. And now 2 of the 3 are unmanned aerial reconnaissance, and the other one is probably one of the most, you look at what what Minot has. You have B-52s and Minuteman III ICBMs. And honestly, it's one of the most, I think, one of the deadliest states in the United States.
Well, they're saying if the U.S. Seceded from the Union, from North Dakota, if North Dakota seceded from the U.S., they would have been the 3rd most powerful nuclear arsenal in all the world back in the 80s.
Oh my gosh. And that's in the 80s. You look at it now, and you have Reapers and the Global Hawks. Is that what the The big ones are?
Yep, global chickens. Yeah, when I fly up here in Grand Forks, I sometimes get the privilege of when I fly over we have to get permission to fly through the base area. It's called a temporary flight restriction at TFR. So it's a zone on a chart. You can see them on charts, and we have to get permission. But anyways, I think this was about a month ago. I was flying to Jamestown, and off my wing, a couple thousand feet below, there's a global hot going on final there for the base, and that was so that was something really cool to see. And then back actually during my private pilot check ride about 2 years ago, I was doing it's called a short field landing. It's basically procedure to get in and out of really tight spaces in an airplane, and that was one of the required parts for our test. And my examiner's sitting there with me. He's like, okay, let's do that landing. And then so we get down, we're approaching the runway at about 65 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden I hear on the radio the tower's clearing the Reaper in the pattern that was with us, which was already really cool and distracting. That they could turn their base leg, which is where they turn perpendicular to the runway. So once they get cleared to that, they can basically come in and they're cleared to land.
Oh wow!
And their approach speed's much faster than 60 miles an hour. I can tell you that because I touched down on the ground, and the procedure for a short field landing is to brake as hard as you can, pull back on the yoke, so you can get maximum aerodynamic braking. Which I can go on and on about aerodynamics, but basically you stop on the runway, and instead of keeping it rolling, and all of a sudden I hear the control tower lady. She's like, all right, take off now. Get off the ground. Get out of the way, basically, because they didn't want to make the Reaper go around. And so I was just sitting there staring, kind of trying to stare back and see if I can on takeoff. And my examiner's like, I know it's cool, but you gotta stare forward.
Yeah, stare forward.
But yeah, it was some really cool experiences
for sure.
Regard, so
yeah, I know it's like you were mentioned earlier. For a lot of people, drones and unmanned or cargo planes might not be as fascinating as the fast fighters, but just hearing the stories that come accompanying a lot of these things, it's incredible. And I had a classmate that worked in the Reaper Ops building, and he was telling me a story. I won't say his name because I believe it's classified, and might get in trouble for telling this story. But a certain person was telling me that they were doing a mission over a Middle Eastern country, and they were providing overwatch for a group of Marines, and the Reaper crew saw a projectile come out of a window, and they told the Marines to look there, and when they got closer, an insurgent dropped a grenade out the window, and they were able to pick up the grenade, return it to where it came from, and neutralize the threat. And I just thought, if that had been any other aircraft, that probably would not have happened. Being able to have guys provide overwatch and see that happen and relay that information in real time from North Dakota to the battlefield in the Middle East, that kind of summed it up. It's like, okay, maybe the mission now was more important than it ever
saving
has
a lot
been.
of lives. Just think about how many people you saved right there.
Exactly. So the future for the Hooligans, I asked a couple people, and they believe that they're going to remain an unmanned flying mission for the time being. There were talks of them possibly in the future converting to, I do not know the name of it, but it's based off of the AgCat, like it's an air.
Oh yeah.
They were talking about the
air tractors.
Yeah, the air tractor.
Yeah, those. I don't know the name either, but I've been seeing pictures of them. I'm like,
yeah, they're like going through testing right now, and every time I see a picture, I imagine the red hooligan stripe, and I'm like, oh my god.
That makes me want to join up right now.
It does. I know.
My grandpa was a crop duster, and I can just imagine seeing that flying.
Yeah, it's such that aircraft, and that deserves an episode on its own.
Yeah.
But thinking about how versatile, like you have the A-10s and you have like Reapers, but having a light, fast attack aircraft that can remain airborne for a while. Like you don't always need an A-10 to level a house. Sometimes it's just like coming from a tree line or something like that. And I think an AgCat or a air tractor would do perfectly in that role.
there's plenty of crazy North Dakotans who would do it. So
Yes, that I bet most of the pilots would come from the Midwest, especially North Dakota.
But there was also rumors. I think it was a few years back about getting C-27s.
Yes,
Yeah.
they were actually getting like that's why they had the C-21 was they were anticipating that, and then when that program was canceled for the Air Force, all those aircraft I believe either went to the Coast Guard or the Boneyard, so they actually never got the cargo mission. Bit of a bummer, but that's how the Air Force works, I guess.
Yeah, lots of bureaucracy.
Yes, lots of bureaucracy. And a quick shout out. I want to give a shout out to all the flight ops. I know we really covered the fighter mission and the Reaper ops, but got to give a shout out to the security forces, especially my friends that are listening into this while we're talking about it. So you guys are the ones that are protecting the gates and not letting people like me and Sam get in there to take pictures. So, all right. I think that kind of sums it up for the hooligan history. Obviously, we left out a lot. There is a lot of history that's in this book. If you want to learn more, you can go to the NDSU archives. They have a lot of like firsthand documents from the 1970s, and also the Fargo Air Museum's library upstairs. I spent almost an hour of my free time looking through their hooligan section, and my jaw about hit the floor. It was absolutely amazing, especially like some of the photograph collections that they have. I need to go back and I might need to borrow them and get them scanned because they are remarkable.
Oh, we used to scan stuff all the time when I volunteered there. A few buddies and I would be like, okay, I want to take this home and read it for a little bit, so I'm going to scan it. But is that book available at all?
This one, I did not see a copy of it in the library. They have the 1990s, and they have many copies of them. They have like 3 of the 97s, like 1997s, and then they have like 6 of the 1977 ones.
Okay.
The 1977 ones are cool because, like in this one, they don't really cover they focus a lot on like the F-16, but many of the missions that they fly with the Reapers and Predators are still very classified.
Yeah.
So they can't, share pictures of them. But in 1977, the last 30 pages, it's just all voodoos, and I love it. Speaking of voodoos, you want to talk about our Kebab Flyer?
Yeah, sure. All right, so
perfect segue.
Our Kebab Flyer is in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. For those of you who don't know where Devil's Lake is, that's about an hour west of Grand Forks on Highway 2. Beautiful area if you want to just visit and go fishing. Like the walleye capital of North Dakota, disputed walleye capital of North Dakota. You also got Sakakawea out west, but yeah, this voodoo definitely on a kebab. I'm gonna pull up the aerial visuals page for people to see that here. One moment here.
For sure.
But I saw this one over Memorial Day weekend back in May. I went camping up there just to kind of escape all the COVID stuff. But I was like, I have to stop at the airport because I have to see this voodoo here. That I think you can see the screen, right?
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, here it is.
Look who took that picture.
I don't know who that is, but
I bet he's a pretty cool dude if he's taking pictures.
I don't know about that, but but yeah, it has the markings of 80311. It was previously with the 111th Fighters Interception Squadron based in Ellington Air Force Base in Texas. I really like this scheme, to be honest. Just with the Texas, the Lone Star flag on the rudder there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with a lot of the voodoos that you see that are still preserved these days. They're almost always, unless it's like in a certain state like North Dakota, they're almost always in the Texas markings. I think other than the Hooligans, I think the Texas Air National Guard is probably the most famous for flying the voodoos. I'll say close third is the Bulldogs, but I think they're more famous for their Phantoms.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy. When I was out in Wyoming, I didn't get to see it, but I was looking on aerial visuals, and in very backwater town in Wyoming, there's a Texan F-101 just sitting on a post,
No,
and it's in pretty decent shape, all things considered. It's like, where did like what is a
I hear.
Texas Voodoo? Yeah, and then you look at, I mean, obviously you have the North Dakota Air Guard history here, but it's like a Texas Voodoo made its way to rural North Dakota. Pretty impressive, but
Well, it's just kind of crazy that all these kebab flyers around. Like before talking to you, I had no idea how many there were.
mhm.
Now I'm on this site all the time when I go on a road
I
trip.
know.
Like when
I got you. I got you on that one. Oh,
What?
I love when we had our previous conversation. I'll say it for the listeners, but if you're into aviation, aerial visuals is a must-have, especially if you're into old fighters. When I go on road trips, I always will map out my route looking at what aircraft I will pass along the way. And speaking of road trips, I actually just was notified that my family that lives in Kansas City is going to be coming up through Wyoming. They're going to Cheyenne. They're going to be in Rapid City. And my aunt was like, I know it's a bit of a drive for you, but if you were to leave on a Saturday, like early, I was thinking early Saturday morning. She's like, we're going to spend the weekend in Rapid City if you want to come and join us. And I was like, Rapid City. And then I thought about what they have there.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm coming. so I will hopefully, I'm going to try and get my camera. I'm going to test and see if I can do, well, this is kind of the back stuff, but for everyone still listening, we appreciate it. I just kind of ramble at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to try and get some footage from that museum, and maybe we can get it uploaded to the YouTube channel as a bit of a walkthrough. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be definitely sweet.
We can make a podcast episode about it.
Yeah. And then, this weekend I mentioned I was going to Bismarck. So, and then I'm going to Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Another one of the things I like to do is go hiking. So, my girlfriend lives out there, so we're gonna go there. But I might see if we can stop in Dickinson. I believe that's T33.
Yep.
And I think I'm just gonna go.
I was actually out there back in June.
So I think I might stop there and just grab a couple pictures of that. Maybe throw it up on our Insta. And
cool.
I don't believe there's anything else along the route, directly along the route. But
let's see, because if you're going through, would you pass through Devil's Lake, or are you going back to Fargo?
I'm actually gonna kind of take a short way. I have work until 5 tomorrow, so
Gotcha.
So I'm gonna try to go there tomorrow night. So I'm probably gonna kind of zigzag through the middle of the state and kind of try something new. Also, it cuts down a little bit on the time.
Gotcha.
I'm a little cheap, so it saves gas that way too.
I feel that, especially nowadays. No, for an upcoming project, I have to go to the Ronald Reagan Minuteman or missile site. So I'm going to try and make a long excursion out of that. But I've also been trying to think of an excuse to go out to Minot for like a weekend, like buy a hotel room or something like that. And actually spend a quality amount of time walking through their museum, because that's where the Texas Flying Legends are.
Yep.
And we'll cover them in an upcoming episode, but that is definitely a museum. Especially if you're in North Dakota, that is a museum that is worth going to.
That's still one I have not made it to.
Oh, you have to go. Oh my gosh.
I flew into Minot last year for a flight lesson, and I got so distracted looking outside and seeing I think it was a C-47. I don't really remember
Yeah, they have the C-47 outside at least.
F-15, I believe.
Yep.
I saw all the outdoor birds. It was kind of going back to that Reaper story. I mean, I was like, I have to pay attention a little bit, but
yeah.
But yeah, it was super cool to see. So I think that's only about a 2.5 hour drive for me. So I'm
for you guys. It's like I gotta get up at the crack of dawn if I'm gonna make it out to Minot.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to fill my weekends with some warbird stuff now.
Cool.
A little bit busy time right now, but this winter for sure. I mean, I'll see if I can swing by the museum this weekend. But
sweet.
But yeah.
Cool.
Also, I think we have one more section here before we ramble too much. We got the aviation history event.
Of course.
I think from now on, I might try to also do first flights. after this episode.
That's a good idea.
More of the ones I like to do are actually first flights, but we can do both. Today is the first flight back in September 10th. Today, that's today's date. 1944 was the first flight of the Fairchild C-82 packet.
Really?
So the packet, I believe, is the predecessor to the C-119 flying boxcar. It's a large cargo and troop transport aircraft, and they were produced throughout the mid-40s. They weren't too widely used among air forces, I believe. I think a few South American countries use them.
The packet. Let me.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a mini 119 almost.
You say C? What was the designation?
C-82.
C-82.
But one of my professors, he's retired now.
Yeah. I got a cool story about this one actually.
One of my professors flew these in Alaska back in I believe in the 60s and 70s. He's retired now. John Bridewell, for those of you from UND, amazing man, has a crazy lifetime of stories, just working all these odd jobs around the States, and he was telling us about these all the time and how rickety they were. But
So was he Air Force out in Alaska or a bush pilot?
He was a bush pilot. So
that's
awesome. All civilian. But.
Awesome. So my cool story about these, my late grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and my grandmother started seeing a new gentleman, a couple years older than her. His name is Roy, or not Roy. I'm sorry. It's oh my gosh, I am blanking. His name. I'm so sorry, but put on the spot. So regardless, he graduated high school during World War II, and he became a paratrooper. He didn't see combat in World War II. It's Gene. His name is Gene. Sorry, Gene.
There you go.
I'm sorry. I'm put on the spot. I love you very much. So Gene was a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne, and he flew out, or he wasn't a pilot, but a paratrooper. You know, I assume everyone listening, you jump out of planes. I asked Gene, like, what was your favorite and least favorite aircraft to jump out of? And he's like, well, we only jumped out of two. And my favorite was the C-47, and I hated the packet. And I was like, really? Why is that? And he's like, well, if you look at it, and he told me to pull up a picture on my phone, you see that it has the same tail. I don't know the exact kind of name for that tail, but it has the same tail as a P-38. And if you know,
fork tail.
Fork tail. And if you know, like, the dangers, if you're jumping out of a plane with a forked tail, it can be a little bit deadly. So he said he lost a couple of friends when their chutes got caught on it. So maybe not so much a cool story, but an interesting one. And I think these were, or maybe it was, I know the AC-119s, were they based on these?
They were, yes.
Yeah, and those were like predecessors to the AC-47s and, gunships basically in Vietnam. But very interesting looking aircraft, and I'd say a quintessential part of the early Cold War U.S. Air Force.
Yeah.
So definitely. Is that it for this episode?
I believe so. Yeah.
All right.
That's all.
We apologize that it's taken a while to get out there. Just like busy schedules, we're both in college. So, but we hope you like this one, and be sure to check for it on our new YouTube channel as well as on Instagram. And I don't know. I don't think we'll be able to upload this to the previous place that it was put.
I can actually keep it as an audio. So it
should, really?
Yeah. It has like it has a video, audio, and then a both file. So the both file can go up to that YouTube.
That is perfect. We also, I do want to start looking to see if we can get it put on Spotify. I had a couple of my coworkers that do landscaping that said they couldn't listen to it.
Oh, okay.
We're getting too far ahead, but you know what? Thank you guys for listening. This has been Plains on the Prairie, episode 2.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.